Hey everyone, I'm Melanie from Streamlined Legal, where we help law firms get the most out of their practice management software. So, I want to talk to you tonight about being a leader. Now, I know that one of the great benefits of the systems and processes that we talk about at Streamline Legal is that we can create a way for people to share information. And so, if I have a team member who's working on something, I can look at what they've documented. I can see exactly where they've left off. If need be, I could pick it up and continue on representing our client, our mutual client, or whatever needed to be done on that file. And so I wanted to talk to you tonight about how that type of firm can really benefit you as a leader and your team and when they're in crisis. So, for example, I want to talk about what type of leader do you want to be when your team is in crisis? So I see two different options. I can be the type of leader that is having to help my team member navigate this crisis in order to keep my business afloat, right? So I need to get information out of them when they're in crisis, or I need to get things from them when they're in crisis. And that really does distract from them being able to deal with the crisis directly, right? Because I'm in there trying to get information or things from them for my business. Or alternatively, I can be able to be the type of leader who gives my team that space and says, hey, don't worry, we've got this. We know where you left off on things. Go deal with what you need to deal with. We are here to support you in your time of crisis, but we don't need anything from you. We can continue to run the business on our own. And that's the type of leader that I would much prefer to be. And I feel like that's going to not only benefit my business in being able to continue with that business continuity, but also be able to benefit my team members because now they don't have to worry about me in their time of crisis or my business. They're simply worried about the things they need to worry about and deal with. And so a lot of times when I talk about these kinds of things, I hear people or attorneys say, that's terrible. Obviously, we don't want our team members in crisis, but how often does that really happen? It's a small risk. Like things don't always, that's not going to happen to me. It's not going to be my team. But I would challenge you to sit down and actually make a list of these types of scenarios. So for example, I sat down recently and made my own list of how and when this has occurred in my life and my businesses that I was a part of. So for example, back when I was an associate, actually this was before I was an associate, when I was a clerk in a law firm, right out of law school, or during law school, I should say. The supervising attorney that I worked under didn't show up for work one day. And so we all assumed that maybe he had court and it didn't make it onto the calendar or something like that. But sure enough, we look everywhere. There's no court anywhere. We're calling. He's not answering his cell phone. Cell phones weren't quite as popular back then, I'll just say. So we weren't able to get a hold of him. And so needless to say, a couple of hours go by. We don't know where he is. We finally get a call, I believe it was from his wife, who tells us that he's actually in the hospital and that he had an accident the night before. He was having some work done on his house and went around to see the work that was being done and didn't realize that there had been some things left behind, that he fell, and it was a terrible, terrible fall, broke many bones. He was in bad shape. So the point is, when we found this out, we had to send an attorney from our office to the hospital to meet with him in order to get the details about the files that he was handling, the things that he was doing. And of course, keep in mind in this particular scenario, he was on a lot of drugs in those initial hours, right? I mean, he was in a lot of pain and having to relay this information to another attorney from our firm. And so I know that that put him obviously in a very difficult situation. It put that other attorney in a difficult situation. There's doctors in and out, there's family members. I mean, this is not a great scenario, right? So that was my first, that I can remember, experience where that happened. The second one I can remember is a friend of mine who was practicing, shared office space with a guy who was also a solo attorney. And this solo actually had a brain aneurysm out of the blue, unexpected. Couldn't even, I mean, in those initial hours and initial days and weeks, he had to learn how to speak again. He had to learn how to move again. And so there were all kinds of things that he could not do. We couldn't get any information from him as to how to help his clients. And somebody had to go in and take over his practice and figure everything out from whatever was left behind, notes, documentation, whatever we could find. That was super, super challenging because, of course, we didn't have that resource. Then when I broke my ankle, if those of you that have heard that story, I I was out of work for a number of days, weeks even, not able to focus because I was on some very heavy medications before and after surgery. And so it made a real challenge for other people to have to go in and pick up. Now, of course, I had structured my practice differently than I had seen in the past. And we do have a very strong culture here at Streamline Legal of documenting things, where we left off, what we plan to do. And so in that scenario, it was a lot easier for people to pick up and give me the space that I needed in order to heal and still keep the business running. Because of course, that's what I was relying upon for my income and to support my family in this time of need. And so all of these things I had an experience with at the time when I then had a colleague whose spouse suddenly passed away. And that, of course, came out of the blue. And again, we were in a situation, I was able to be the type of leader where I could say to this colleague, we've got it. Don't even worry about it. You've got things to think about. Frankly, when something like that happens, oftentimes your team member will be in absolute medical shock and will not be able to even remember or discuss the things that you think that they're able to discuss. And so it put a really, really great opportunity for us to be able to put into place those systems that we had designed a long time ago, not in anticipation of anything like this, in order to be able to allow this team member time and space to heal and to deal with the crisis that they were in. But again, if I had had a practice or a business that had not been set up that way, I would not have been able to do that for my team member. And so when you think about the business that you're building, I want you to think very carefully about how it can serve not only you, but also your team members in a time of crisis. Because it's not enough, frankly, for us to be able to help our clients in a time of crisis. We also need to be able to help ourselves and our team members in their times of crisis. And so to be able to say to them, you know what, we've got this. Don't worry about it. We don't need any information from you. You've documented everything very well. We'll pick up, we'll take off from where you left off. And then it'll allow them, frankly, a business to come back to. It will allow them to come back and not be overwhelmed. It will allow them not to feel like they need to rush back because otherwise things aren't getting done and we're putting the whole business in jeopardy. It will allow them the time and space to heal that they need. And so it was awesome to be able to offer that to our team members, myself included when I broke my ankle, but to be able to offer that to our team members and be able to give them the time and space that they needed because we had set up and structured our business with systems that supported the rest of us when they were gone. And so I really, really would encourage you to sit down, make a list of the scenarios that you were personally involved in when this happened, because I find it hard to believe that it's never happened in your small sphere. I suspect it probably has, and maybe you dealt with it directly, or maybe you just heard about how it was dealt with. But when those times come, because they will come, right? We don't know when, we don't know how, we can hope that they never happen. But in order to be prepared, I would much prefer that you be in a situation where you have that as a leader to offer to your team and say, don't worry, we've got this covered. So if you're not in that situation, reach out. We'd love to talk to you about that. If you are in that situation, congratulations, and please continue to support that culture within your firm so that you can continue to support your team members in their time of crisis. Thanks so much for listening tonight. Have a great evening.